device, MacBook Pro, input device, external mic, output device, multi-output, check. Okay. Oh, hey man, hey people. Can you guys hear me on Discord on the voice chat? Erica, who is that?
Yeah,
Daisy.
I can hear you.
All right, awesome. Um, what am I doing? Something. Hey Travis. Projector. Okay. All right, we should have happy stream factor on Discord. Do you realize this is the last class day of the semester?
Yeah, I'm
That's,
a little torn on it.
yeah. No, well, not me.
I
So,
mean, I'm ready for the semester to be done, but I'm also not ready to have you be done with having you as my teacher.
oh, you're not Erica. You're not just sucking up, right? Or maybe
No, definitely not.
well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. There's always these cool relationships. It's the cool thing about, it is the cool thing about the semester is, for me, it's like every semester you're meeting new people, and every semester there are people that become kind of like lifelong friends, that because you're going to go out, you know what I mean? It's like, hopefully the relationship you wind up with your parents, at some point you're not teenagers anymore, and then you're kind of like, it moves much more into a friendship, to a, mutual, it better, I mean, you're doing it wrong if it doesn't, right? You, you and,
Yeah.
you and or your parents are doing it wrong if it's not allowed to move to a pure relationship. Okay. But anyway, I feel the same way about the whole class, the whole university thing, you know, just the relationships you build and they last, a lot of them, those last a long time. And there's never been a better time to stay in touch, better, I mean, era, generation, you know what I mean? We can all kind of, whatever,
Yeah.
hang out,
Yeah.
see, whatever, become friends on Facebook, whatever, just kind of stay in contact. LinkedIn, if nothing else. So,
Yeah, I don't have a Facebook.
really, that's
Yeah.
so, you know, it's, well, we got a minute while we're just kind of waiting for everybody to slog in. You know, here's an interesting observation I've made. It may stagger you to just conceptualize that I might have made some observations, and have developed some theories. But there is an interesting thing that happens generationally when it comes to technology. And it relates to, this is sort of an interesting bit of advice for all of you, something that Douglas Adams wrote. There was a last book published in the Hitchhiker's Guide series after he died. Uh, so it was kind of a little bit kludged in my view. You know what I mean? Well, not just in my view. It was like unfinished last, book, and then a bunch of essays. And the book was published under the title "The Salmon of Doubt." And but in "The Salmon of Doubt," in this essay, Douglas Adams talks about how technology is funny because anything that is sort of in the world, already by the time you come of age. So anything that was kind of there from sort of, early teens and younger is just the way the world is, right? I don't know if I told you guys about this, but watching, at my a friend of mine with a little, I don't know how old his daughter is, call it 3, and she's in the kitchen, and she just goes, "Hey Google, play Baby Shark," right? And then in the middle of, then out of the air comes Baby Shark, whatever that stupid song is. And then she starts dancing, right? And I was conceptualizing, she's at the age before you actually really form a lot of permanent memories, you know? In other words, she will never remember a time when you didn't just say your desires to the air and they were fulfilled, you know? Right.
Yeah, that's pretty
So
nuts.
anyway, right. So for her, this is just the world, the way the world always is. So Douglas Adams, everything that kind of is there before you turn like 15, is just the way the world is. Anything that shows up kind of after you're aware and of age, through to like, early middle age, if you will, or you know what I mean, kind of late, real live adulthood. Call it, your 30s and thereabouts, is like new and it's cool and it's exciting and there's a wave and you can catch it and you can probably make a good living in that space, right? And then anything that shows up after you're like 40 is like contrary to the will of God, unnatural, right? Unnatural, and is one of the evidences that the world's going to hell, right? And
Yeah.
what's kind of cool about that, what's really really cool about that, is that it is always true in every generation. This is not like kids these days or whatever. Every generation, this is like a sliding window that just moves through time. From that the old people, oh, this horseless carriage and these kids with their horseless carriages, you know what I mean? They're going to kill somebody. And every generation has this thing. And so, anyway, what is all that meant to say? Well, what got me onto that? Facebook. So, then this was my observation. The other thing is that the things that show up when you're in that kind of prime time, they tend to stick, right? Which is why a guy like me, who kind of came of age when classic rock was coming of age, all right, in the early 70s, really. You know what I mean? The dawn of classic rock was kind of the mid 60s, but it really blossomed in the mid 70s, really in the 70s, in my opinion, disco notwithstanding. And so I will always have this affection for the music of that era, right? And you guys will do the same thing with the music of your time frame. And then when you're my age, you'll be going, oh, kids these days. You'll do the same thing, okay? But then what I've noticed is that if you go to houses, just drop into random houses for whatever, if you're selling insulation for the summer or whatever, what you'll notice is that when you go to the door of a house and the person in the house is like older than me, the TV is in the living room and it is on, and there is something stupid just piping out of it. Because that generation, like my late mother's generation, they listened to the radio, and one day there was going to be a picture in it. That was what she grew up with. So when the TV showed up, she was a teenager. And then for the rest of her life, the TV was always on, and there was a TV in every room of the house. Okay? Then my generation that grew up with parents doing that, we were like, there's no way in hell I'm going to have a TV in my living room. We'll have a TV room. You know what I mean? No, there's not going to be a TV. That's not going to be the centerpiece. The TV with the two, overstuffed chairs where we can all sit there and get fat and stupid, you know? And so my generation kind of went away from that, right? Anyway, what I'm trying to say is my generation, when did Facebook start? 20 years ago? How long has Facebook been around? Anyway, well, how long? Anyone know? I mean, I love these comments, by the way. Anyway, we're not. This is not programming languages, but crap, man, it's the last day of the semester, and we can't bring donuts. No, but anyway, what I'm getting at is, I was like 40-ish when Facebook showed up. Okay, around 40, which was kind of on the and I'm very much not one of the old. I don't think I'm one of the old crusties. Not in a deep way. I tend to, what I mean, try to understand. But then there was a point, basically, in other words, your generation is like a post Facebook generation already. There is a lot of folks your age that are not on Facebook. And I don't know what you guys are doing for social media. Instagram? I don't know what you guys are doing. What are you guys doing? What's the thing? Snapchat, more direct, more kind of one-on-one? TikTok, because Vine didn't quite cut it. You know? Let's see. I'm reading the comments. Yeah, no, I think that's right, Erica. I think there's a lot of people, one of my business partners who's in his 30s has never had Facebook. So anyway, just saying that my generation was like the trailing edge of Facebook, and that generation, and including older than me right now, and for another 10 or 20 years behind me, are going to kind of die on Facebook. They're going to die with an active Facebook account. Very hard for people like me, my age, to move away. For a lot of you guys, you've never. So people my age, there's a weird distribution of people my age that have never had one because they were so far behind technology, and people your age who have never had one because they're so far ahead of the technology. And both of these actually have a role to play. Anyway, so and if anybody's interested, there's another book I'd recommend that has to do with technology adoption curves called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. It's really, really, I think it's an important book. It's an ancient business book. But anyway, so yeah, man, great conversation on the chat. So let's see. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to talk about the end of this whole thing. And I have one important question, which is, can I pull off the Ernest Hemingway look if I just keep this up? I say I can, but I don't know if you guys remember Ernest Hemingway. Very depressing writer. I once read a collection of short stories of Ernest Hemingway, trying to understand what this guy was all about. There were 10 stories in this short book. The book was called The Snows of Kilimanjaro. And in the 10 stories, in 9 of the 10 stories, the main character, the main protagonist, dies. Spoiler. Hemingway. And in the one in which he doesn't die, he gets beat up real bad. That was my impression. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to really go invest in A Farewell to Arms or For Whom the Bell Tolls. I don't think so. Okay. So yeah, that's my quarantine job is to try to work on the Ernest Hemingway look. I do have it, especially as I gain my quarantine weight. It actually supplements the thing. Okay, so a couple things. We had this discussion right at the end of last time, and then I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at it. It was chapter 18, question number 2 about pass by name. So who's Nebulator? Is that Nathaniel? You're really gonna shave? You're really gonna shave your head? You're really gonna do that? Because why not? Indeed. knock yourself out. Man, I can't keep up with the comments. They're so good. I'll be doubling back on it. Anyway, so I dove back in and I tried, just refreshed again on pass by name, which is actually very similar to macro expansion, right? And I just wanted to say a couple things. These are kind of more language topic things. In the world of C, and especially kind of operating systems, data communications, low level stuff, my experience is that it is not uncommon to use macro expansion. Now, that's not quite the same. I mean, it's a form of parameter passing, right? In the sense that whenever the user says this one thing, it's in the symbol table, right? And the symbol table knows to take this text and literally replace it with this text. And so macro expansion, you just have to understand is a textual replacement methodology. Okay? And what that means is if the text that you blow up refers to stuff, you can trash stuff inadvertently, right? And the book talks about this, right? Where you've got, some variables in there, and then they happen to be variable names that exist just outside of that. And now you blow this thing up and it's trashing stuff. In other words, when you do macro expansion, which I have seen a lot of in C, okay, and assembly, frankly, the assembler that I used when I started at HP in 1988, writing device drivers for the original HP personal computer, the Vectra, was actually called MASM, which stood for macro assembler. And so macros were actually a big part of that feature. I don't know what the state of the art is like right now with the assembly language tools, but that was the thing, right, back then. Anyway, not uncommon because you're writing in C and assembly because efficiency is an issue, right? And so you don't want to make a method call or a function call for one line, right? That overhead, push on the stack, jump over there, right? Pop back off, for one line. But you do have these one-liners that occur all the time, so macros are a great way to do it. But in that context, you're still very careful with the macros for this exact reason, right? The author talks about capturing, right? The sort of the inadvertent side effect. And essentially, call by name is really macro expansion with the following caveat, which is you are passing a value into a function, but what you're doing essentially is like a where's Ammon? Are you on? Sorry. Oh, I'm not caught up. There we go. Yeah, well, so Ammon just said, I feel like pass by name is only useful when you care about what variable names are. Yeah, I think so. And in my view, it's one of those sort of slight anachronisms that's there for historical purposes to understand. It does elucidate a little bit more how activation records work, and it makes you think about stuff. But I don't know of any language of any importance today that uses it. And if somebody wants to correct on that, that'd be great if you want to look it up. But that's my impression right now anyway. So anyway, but what it really does is essentially, kind of does like a macro replace of whatever the formal parameter is, which is what's inside the method, with what the actual parameter was, which was sent, right? So in what were some of the examples, right? Like in the example from the book, there's this call to the function with I plus 1 and I, right? And then internally in the formal parameters, there's a pass by name A and a B, so that A gets bound to I plus 1 and B gets bound to I. So wherever you say I, you instead say I plus 1. And wherever you say B, is that the way it works? Yeah. And then wherever you say B, you actually replace it and say I. And then this is really the critical difference with pass by name, is that the I in question is the context, the scope, okay, the block of the caller. That's really it. So just to kind of clarify, because I had to kind of go back and refresh, because honestly I haven't thought about it for quite a while. And as I said last time, the advantage disadvantage of the podcast is, if I haven't looked back at it, then it's easy to just go a little longer. Whereas if you're doing the talking head thing every semester, then you teach it every semester no matter what. Anyway, so as I noodled a little bit on the actual question, right, which asked you to kind of do a little bit of an analysis, come up with an example. You know, I don't know. I don't honestly. I was really second guessing it after the questions last time. I was kind of second guessing the homework question. Just like and the idea really, though, the idea is that what they. So I just want to say this. I want you to just noodle. I'll be lenient on the grading, but as far as that particular question is concerned, anything that's just taking a crack at it, I'll give you credit. But the thing I care most about is there's a context relative to parameters, and there's also just an opportunity to talk again about a little bit of analysis. You know what I mean? Think about this kind of from an analytical perspective. In other words, can I, in ML, there's no pass by name. So you're not trying to say, how does ML do pass by name? It doesn't, okay? ML, what does ML do? It everything's immutable. It just kind of, you hand it this thing. It's like, oh, that's now my thing, right? And I'm going to evaluate to something, and that's what this expression's going to be when I'm done. So what you'd really have to do, and the big hint I will give you is one of the ways you can sort of show that difference with pass by name is because it's crap ton of side effects, right? I mean, you do something like I plus one and I, right? Well, if you took just that code that is in the book, right? It's got a function f, right, with two parameters a and b. I haven't actually tried this, but a lot of times where you can really tell the impact of pass by name is that the order in which you put these things in the parameter list can make a difference, okay? Depending upon the operation. So play around with the homework, not the homework, but the text in the book, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me just pull it up. I don't want to belabor this too much, but we did talk about it. Let me see. Yeah, right. Let me drag this over for you. So right here, this is the code, the sample code that that Weber talked about, right? And so, hang on, let me get that out of the way. So the idea being that if this were ML, I don't even know. Like I said, I haven't really looked at it. But if this were ML, and I don't like the fact, I guess this F is the one getting called and G is the one doing the calling. G has a little local variable called I, which is assigned a value of 3. And then we're past, I plus 1 and I. If you toy around with that a little bit and toy around with the order, I think it'll become a little bit more clear where the side effects are kind of, showing up. And there are some examples that, let me see if I'll just give you a couple more hints. Let me see. No, is that the one? I can't remember. It was number 2, right? Wasn't it 18 number 2? Seems like it was. Anyway, that's kind of just play around with the idea of, the order in which you put them. Okay? Here's an example. Let me just explain a little bit of an example. Imagine that I have a function and it sets up a variable like x or I or something like that. And then um, now this is a really good example. If I have a function that just takes two variables, right? And and I pass some value, in twice. In other words, and then if internally I've got A and B, and then A and B both, kind of trash stuff. Um, A gets assigned one value, B gets assigned a different value. Then imagine, for example, that they were one and two, right? The values that you got assigned. Then back up top, right? When you assigned the value 1 to A, it's actually assigning the value 1 to the variable up outside. Then you assign B a value like 2, then it's actually assigning the value 2 to that thing. So if I go A and B, then up top the value is 2, and if I go B and A, up top the value is 1. And so that pass by name has that, that dependency. And obviously, no such side effects are going to happen if I have some, you know, similar kind of function in ML that just simply, has some local value, x gets 1, and then I just make a call that expects 2 integers, and I pass in x twice, you know. First of all, in ML, if you just internally then just said A is X and B is X and you're done, then you're just done and nothing happened at all. So anyway, it's more just that exploration, which immediately would tell you that in this case, I do it this way and the value changes, and over here, there's no such side effect, really is the effect. And that literally is kind of like the limit to which I actually care about that particular homework. Pass by name explicitly needs an L value. Well, yeah, Ammon. No, I think it just sort of depends upon how, if you have a value being passed and you've got A and B, depends on how they get used. Because you can use a formal parameter, right, on either side, either as the thing on the left or as the thing on the right, right? In other words, the L value or the R value. And if it's the L value, that's kind of the part where you're making an assignment and it's having a ripple effect. But you can also use it as an R value where it's just has that value, and gets, assigned to some other L value, right? Anyway, so hey, we got to talk about, that's all I wanted to talk about on that homework assignment. It is interesting, from the perspective of, noodling around in these edge cases can be interesting and can kind of motivate you to think about these issues. It's valuable. As a skill to acquire, you got to really know how to handle pass by name. It's going to be big, no. So, anyway, take your best crack at that, okay? And I will be uber forgiving. So I've been thinking about midterms and crap like that, which oh man, let me pull up. You can tell I love this topic, right? The reality is there's a lot of people suffering and, behind in a lot of things. And this whole thing is just kind of taking an emotional toll and continues to, So I am pulling up the study guide to what would have been midterm 2. By the way, study guide to midterm 3, which I never really did right. This bodes well for you, by the way, with what comes next. But the study guide for midterm 3, all it's really going to say is, hey, there's a handful of different parameter passing, pass by reference, pass by value, and some exploration of that space. Right? That's what that's going to be. And then the logic paradigm, which we talked about, would be tell me about the logic paradigm, right? Just like we did, give me the fundamentals. Remember, we did, give me the fundamentals of the imperative paradigm or the object-oriented paradigm, the functional paradigm. I would obviously ask the question, give me the fundamentals of the logic paradigm, right? Which would be the three things that we were beating on. Anybody want to throw those out for, extra conceptual, extra credit? If not real points, at least, happiness. Anybody? Bueller? Bueller? What are the three key things? You can say it. Can I not hear you again? Or can I hear you? Gah. Okay, hang on. I'm going to do the dumb thing again. Hold tight. I got to disconnect.
How about now?
Yeah, much better. And then I've got to bring my little minimized window back. And in other words, I got to redo the go live to the right window. That is so frustrating that is just such a common thing. All right, but I think I can hear you guys now. Yeah, go. Somebody want to go? Boom, Ammon. Yeah, I would flip the order on 2 and 3. I think it's important to flip the order on 2 and 3. So 1 is facts, right? And then 2 is like relations, is the whole relationship aspect. And number 3 is queries. Now you ask a bunch of questions. You can make assertions, which is a form of query, and get a true false, or you can, okay, that makes sense. Right? You can make an assertion, or you can really more ask a question. Who are the brothers? Who are the whatever? Anyway, yeah. So that was it. I would ask questions like, give me, make an argument pro or con on whether SQL is a logic programming language. What would be the argument? That could be interesting, right? So that's me. You know what I'm going to do. It's that kind of stuff. And then over on the other stuff, the kind of the post midterm 1 stuff, what we get is, this is actually posted and published, right? It's scope. So there's some important ideas there, right? The notion of blocks, and classic block scope rule and things like that. And, memory locations for variables, static and dynamic, and then memory management, which you probably have a deeper understanding of now because of monkeying around with the memory management stuff, pros and cons of things like best fit, first fit. Concepts like dangling pointers and memory leaks, when you're dealing with languages like C, C++ that don't have that garbage collection and do make you, piddle around with pointers, that's a thing. That's a real thing. Anyway, so it is so Nathaniel, where is it? It is dumbly, it's under assignments, which I think is really bad on my part. Because it's not really, it's not an exam, but down at the bottom, no, sorry, it's not under assignments. It's under There, if you scan on down, it's like midterm one, midterm two. Um, that's where it is. Study guide midterm two. So here's what I think I'd like to do. So what I don't want to do is, I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't want to do. Like you, there's a lot of things I don't want to do, and that I do want to do. So Nathaniel, do you see that thing in just under assignments? Like there's lectures. Thanks for the link, Ammon. There's lectures, readings, homework, language projects, project days, homework days, and then it goes midterm one, midterm two. Um, anyway, what I would like you to do for the final is, all right, thanks, Nathaniel. Here's what I'd like you to do. I would like you to just kind of look through the study guide questions. And look through the study guides of what it says, as midterm two. And then, look at the topics. You already know by now the kinds of questions that I'm going to ask. Even if I don't do a study guide for midterm three, what I want you to do is take 5 concepts that are interesting to you and it can be across the entire class, but at least 3 of them need to be kind of like, since the first midterm. Okay. And what I want you to basically do is write your own midterm/final questions. Write 5 questions in the spirit. They can be pulled directly from something I've done, but just understand, here's what I want essentially. And I want this, kind of like as a PDF, and then I'll open up a thing for final where you can submit those there, okay? But I want a PDF, and what I want in the PDF is 5 questions where it's in the spirit of the way you already know by now what the kind of questions I like to ask, the thought-provoking kinds of questions. But rather than the little dumb little whatever, you do your little 3-sentence answer, hoping that I hope he reads my mind and guesses that I know the material. What you'll do instead is you write some interesting question. Like the question might be, in what way would you consider SQL a logic programming language? In what way would it not be? And then you could do a little more, you dive in a little bit more to that issue, and you write at least, half a normal page, no more than 1 page, and no less than a half page. And I'm only putting the space on that. I'm limiting the space because you don't need to write, war and or peace, or some other lengthy novel. Why doesn't The Count of Monte Cristo get used as an example when people talk about long books? Why is it always War and Peace? Count of Monte Cristo is a much longer book. Maybe because it's more interesting and it reads better. Maybe that's why. Les Mis is a much longer book. Thanks, Devin. Devin the Absurd. Devin, what are you now, Devin? Devin the Agreeable. So, anyway, what am I trying to say? You create the interesting question. You create the question you want to answer. 5 of them. 5 of them. Okay? You have to write your question, by the way. Okay? And you have to put your name on it. Write your questions at the top. And please, and what I'd like you to do actually is have each page be a new question. I don't want you to run them together. Okay? And I'll post this. I'll do it today. Okay? And just understand that, the more readable it is, the more well-written it is, the easier it is for me to grok it, the better. Use code, use code examples if you need. Draw pictures, do some graphics, whatever. I'm really just asking you to write 5 persuasive essays, um, or you know what I mean, or thought-provoking essays, or informational ones. Go dig into whatever resources you can find to help you supplement what you're going to say. Okay. As you're looking at sources, just be super careful. If you quote anybody out there, that's totally fine. You just have to put quotes around it and just tell me where that came from. You know, who said it, right? The thing about and just to make this really super clear, the thing about plagiarism, it's not quoting somebody else is not plagiarism. Taking somebody else's words and pretending that they were yours is plagiarism. So you can quote your little heart out. You just have to put quotes around it and just tell me that those were somebody else's words. And taking somebody else's words and just paraphrasing them into your words, thought by thought is still plagiarism. Okay? You have your thought, and then you grab other quotes if you need, or ideas, whatever, synthesize that, make that your own. You drive it, and then if you need to grab some stuff to back you up, great. Okay. So that is the final. That's what we're going to do for the final. It's kind of, the down the stretch, whatever, I don't even know. And when it's time for grades, I'm going to be pretty forgiving. And I will still take, late work and things like that, like we talked about, until April 30th. Okay. Until that, and that's the last day of finals. So again, I'm bending that rule, a rule that I believe in under normal conditions, which is don't accept work after the last day of the semester to allow students to prepare and do their finals. I think everything's kind of open right now. Anybody, any questions? You got any questions at all about what I'm doing there, what I'm trying to do, what you need to do? Anyone? Bueller?
I'm guessing you're going to include those instructions on the post you make for the final.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if there's any, and Travis, if there's any, like confusion once it goes up, just let me know. You know what I mean? If there's anything I've done there, like, oh, you forgot to say the one thing, or this is unclear, because this is a new thing, so it's kind of like new cut at something, right? So let's see. Devin the Agreeable asks, is there extra credit if we come up with a really interesting question? I mean, yeah, right? I mean, if I here's my philosophy about extra credit is that whenever I'm grading about anything, if it's just like, oh man, and it causes my brain, I mean, I'm not underexposed, right, to the topics and to the issues and the history. You say something that makes my brain pop, then it's easy for me to kind of go, boom, I'm gonna give you something much bigger. Juice, whoever that says, essay means 2 paragraphs tops, right? No, I don't know where you came up with that. No, I said this, at least a half page and no more than a full page of text. You can go over with pictures. If you have diagrams or code examples or things like that, you can supplement. So, all right. So no less than half a page, kind of normal. Don't make me do the thing, okay? Designate which font you're going to use. You know what I mean? Be reasonable. The key is not how many words you use. The key is impressing me. And it turns out it'll take a certain number of words to impress me. So it's like, so we could say 5 words, but if those 5 words were impressing you, well, 5 words depending on what the words are not going to impress me, in the context of what we're doing here. Okay? Let me keep going through here. Oh yeah, thanks Nathaniel for following up on that as well. Let's see. What was the question about? So Ammon said. So I'm assuming. Yeah. So there's only one thing here. There's no extra midterm. Okay. So Ammon had said. So I'm assuming we have midterm over the weekend, then the final where we create the 5 essay questions. Incorrecto. Just that final, just that 5-question essay thing, and that'll take the place of whatever the subsequent follow-on midterm would have been. But you still have the study guide, and you already know. We already talked about the things I would say. All the parameter passing chapter was about was the different different ways of parameter passing. You know what I would ask. And logic programming, right? So, yeah. So how about, you could do this one. How about you make a compelling argument of why pass by name? Don't do this one. You could make a compelling argument about why pass by name is the wave of the future. That's provocative. Now you got your work cut out for you. Oh, man. And then what I would love to have after the 5 questions, if you are inclined, I'm not going to make you do it, is kind of like detailed advice, what do you feedback, criticism, praise, whatever, just kind of feedback about the current organization of the class. Obviously, things got trashed out. After spring break, everything was a carnage. So just give that, you know what I mean? Just give that proper consideration. Okay. But, anything, thanks, Ammon, anything that's like, because what I really care about is a lot of what we do have come out of discussions with students. You understand that, right? The project day approach, just about everything we've done that this class is a byproduct of me picking the brains of the students, trying to get my head around what your experience is, and therefore kind of like what works and what doesn't work. And, and I have a bazillion ideas. And also you understand that this is a hard constraint satisfying problem, right? Because there's a lot of, There's a lot of conflicting forces that I'm trying to balance. There's things that I wish we could go deep on, and then it's like there's so much to cover, really. Like when I was just talking about, going back to the questions out of, the mythical second midterm, and looking at things like, memory leaks and dangling pointers and stuff like that. These are, I wish we could do more with like activation records. I've debated whether there's like a code project methodology where some project would like carry through the whole semester. Then what do you do that in? Is that all in Java? You know what I mean? I don't even know. I've also debated. By the way, Devin, you can edit those. You can edit your chat on Discord, and on Facebook too. But no, I've even debated reorganizing it to make room for like a contemporary hot language, right? Candidates would include Go, Julia, Rust, Swift, right? I mean, it's about that exposure. Because here's the thing, okay, as long as we're just kind of doing a little bit of, rehab as far as it may also give you ideas for essays, for the last five little essays. But there's kind of a general debate in teaching classes like this. One approach says, pick a language, and that's going to be like the language, but it needs to be a multi-paradigm language. It could be Python, it could be Scheme, it could be, something, and teach all the principles in this multi-paradigm language, right? So that you're adapting it to all the whatever. That is an approach, and some people like that idea. I tend to not like that as much, just my own personal preference, right? The other one is what I've done a bit of, which is we have these three, I was about to say quadrants, but a quadrant is literally a fourth. These three trimesters. I don't know what are they. They're three somethings, three divisions, right? Where we're going to do ML to illustrate kind of functional. The Three Amigos, thank you. The Three Horsemen, because the fourth got lost. I don't know. The Tres Leches. That's right. Did it ever occur to you that if you go to like Cafe Rio and get a Tres Leches and then just take it home and then pour yourself a glass of milk? That's cuatro leches, my friend. That's what I like to do. And anyway, and then and we do the object oriented with Java, and we do the logic with Prolog, right? But another approach is what gets denigrated and dismissed as the language of the month club. That's what I've heard it referred to as. Usually, being critical, somebody who just doesn't like that approach, right? I happen to like the language of the month club. And when I had a class like this one in my undergrad, a little different, not as deep on the analysis, not as much, leading you into, Curtis's advanced architecture class / compiler, right? But I had a class, that was programming languages. And it was kind of a language of the month club. And it was my first exposure to C. Everything I'd done at that point had been, Pascal or some, precedent assembly, basic. Anyway, but mostly things were Pascal. But I wrote a language in I wrote a program in Lisp, couple. I wrote programs in, hold on, you got me with the, interesting, about Rust. So I wrote programs in Lisp, which was my first exposure to functional programming, which, so very many parentheses. I think ML is a much, much gentler entry. I did programs in Forth, which is a stack-based language. APL, which is a matrix-based language with some funky stuff. I did programs, what did I do? Lisp, APL, Forth. It's been a while. There had to have been a couple others. Anyway, but what might be interesting is somewhere in the ML, would it be interesting to just drop in for a day and say, let's talk about Lisp just for literacy. You know what I mean? And then you write a little program in Lisp. And I know Rust is the future. Who's pumping all this Rust stuff out there? Ammon. Ammon, are you a Rust zealot, Ammon? And can I not hear you? Oh, I never used it. one of the guys, in our research lab is a significant Rust zealot, and I have not written any Rust on it. But again, so one approach would be to wrap up the end by dropping a little, a day each on Go, Julia, Rust, Swift. What are the other ones that tend to come up? Those are the big ones. Go definitely comes up. Julia comes up. Rust comes up. The idea would be like a little tour, where we could just like show some code and maybe even like, I don't know, do we actually have you write programs, I don't know. But those are ideas that I'm noodling over, in terms of trying to make the class better. Plexel. Yeah, Devin, man, that's going to be the future right there. Devin's going to make that language just rock and roll after his internship. Yeah. Anyway, does that make sense? So if you would be so kind as to tack on a sixth essay, which is really just give me anything, good or bad. You don't even have to like know what you would do better to say, look, this one thing just did not work for me, and that's fair even if you don't have a solution. That's totally fair. I'm constantly, this to me is a really, really difficult topic to teach. It is. Because if you just take the book and just sort of like, if you just take the book and roll through it, it can feel like a great deal of Trivial Pursuit. And maybe that's okay. I don't tend to learn that way. I don't learn in Trivial Pursuit land. I learn in contextual land. I need to have some purpose, some reason, what I'm going to do, which is why I'm going to, give you real projects to do in these languages that we are doing. So, not sure, man. I'm just noodling. I always want to try to make it better. Every class I've ever taught, in what is now 21 years of university setting, with a gap in between, and much longer than that in other settings. I think the first year that I taught like CS was 87. I mean, as an instructor, not a TA. So whatever 87 takes us back to, 33 years. Anyway, I have always obsessively worked the class, trying to crack the nut, trying to find the right thing that we can just ba-boom, ba-boom. And anyway, this has been a struggle. Anyway, I feel like we've done some things right. There's some things I'm still, not satisfied with. Anyway, so that's kind of what I've got. Do you guys have any? And again, I don't know if you guys have cut out, on audio. If I can hear you on Discord, but are there any other questions that you guys have? And if you are talking on Discord, I'm not hearing it. Okay.
I think I'm in pretty good shape here.
I got audio. Okay. Yeah, and so another thing we could do, since we got like 15 minutes, and obviously I'm totally fine, cutting loose early. Who cares, right? But if anybody has any just random questions for me, it could be whatever. Could be languages, but it could be career, it could be business, it could be, grad school, it could be, philosophy, like literally anything, Thanks, Devin. Devin the agreeable. I do appreciate that. Trying my best, man. Trying to make it interesting and keep it popping and not just arbitrary, crap that vanishes within 3 days after you walk out. That's kind of my goal. And I will say this, everything that I've kind of tried to focus on in this class are things that I honestly believe that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you'll want to know. They will still be relevant. That's what I'm trying for. Whether I succeed, I mean, obviously I'm sure I don't in the ultimate or perfect sense by any stretch. But it is what I'm trying to focus on. So anyway, you guys have anything else you want to ask me? Last shot at Dr. K. Thanks, Travis. Oh, and speaking of, while you're making like happy comments, do the SRIs. If you would follow the link in your email that you got and do the SRI, it does. The way I look at it is, I'd like the SRI in the end to be accurate, right? As long as we're taking the average of ordinal data, a large N is still better, and it's more the larger N is, the more resilient it is, right, in the face of outliers. So the more of those SRIs that that you guys can do. I mean, each of you one, but I mean the more of you that do it, the better and the more accurate the data is. And I'd like that. I'd like the reflection to be as accurate as possible. Okay. So yeah, please do that. Let me see. What are the comments here? Okay. Yeah, Devin, I don't know anything about that test. I haven't been here long enough. Anyway, any other questions you guys have? Any other nags? This is your last shot. I mean, I'll always be on Discord if you want to chat. So, how to rock the GRE. If you're going to go to grad school, you need to rock the GRE. Usually what happens, by the way, when it's time to apply to grad school, there are 3 things that typically get considered. One is your GPA in your undergrad. Another one is the GRE, which is the Graduate Record Examination. I took it twice because by the time I applied for my PhD, they required it, and my old scores were like expired, which I don't even know what that means, I guess. And then, ironically, anyway, the technical aspects were a worse score, and the non-technical aspects were actually a better score. It was odd. I got in anyway. But so GPA is one, GRE is the other, and letters of recommendation. So one thing I recommend strongly, no pun, is if you're thinking grad school, you've got to build relationship with a professor. And I want to be really clear about this. I don't just mean you got to suck up to get a letter. I'm saying that if you come to me, and I've had this happen a lot. Oh, and so Ben said, yeah, if you're doing a master's degree here, I don't think we require the GRE, and especially if you're known to us here in the program. So there are programs, but this is also a professional program, not a research program per se. Okay, but where was I going? Letters of recommendation. I've had students be like, hey, Dr. K, would you be willing to write me a letter of recommendation for grad school? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm happy to. But then I'm like, but here's the thing, and I would just say this, and I will say this to you as well, if I don't really know you. I'll say, you have to understand that when you're applying to grad school, usually you get like 3 letters, okay? So you have people submit. These 3 letters are your chance to shine. They're your chance to get an independent person, 3 of them, which you could get one weird suck up letter, but you can't get, it's hard to get three FACO letters, right? So the three is important as a number, but you're stuck with about three. Usually it's not more than three. If all that professor can say is, yeah, I liked him just fine. He was in my class. He got an A. Seemed smart. But I don't, and that's really all I know. But what I'll say usually is, you just need to understand there's an expression which is faint praise is damning, right? In other words, you have an opportunity to praise, and then what you say, what you say when you're given an opportunity, if it's faint, if it's praise but faint, like, okay, I'll pick on Erica since she just asked the last question, right? I could equally pick on Devin, but if I'm just like, if someone's like, what do you think about Erica? Like, yeah, she was in my class. She was very punctual. How you feeling about that? Right? And, because really it's like, wait, you had her in your class for an entire semester. I gave you an opportunity to tell me about her, and all you could say is she was very punctual. Oh, she once brought donuts for everybody. Right? That faint praise is damning. So I need to be able to go, oh no, let me tell you about Erica. Yes. Oh, she would be a great asset to your program. Whatever. And I need to be able to have some exposure and experience. Now you can do that by being a TA and getting to know a professor. You also have to gauge who the professor is, and can they write the boom letter of the ages. What are you getting? Also, if there's a research lab, you know what I mean, you get the research lab thing. Also, for academia, academic letters are going to count the most. Work letters are going to count less unless you've got a hell of a story to tell. Okay? If you've got a killer story and it's your industrial letter that's going to elucidate that can be advantageous. Like, this is the guy, you're like, yeah, remember Ruby on Rails? Yeah, this was the guy who invented that, whatever, you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, then that's an industry story to tell. But it really, really needs to be academic. So if you're thinking about grad school, you got to be thinking about an academic connection. And then if your GPA is smoking, there's like what we call limited borrowing. So if two of them are strong, the other one can be weak and you can kind of still get in. If two of the three are weak, it's more of a struggle. If they're all weak, it's a greater struggle. And one of the things you can do to hide a myriad of sins is smoke the GRE, which is back to Devin's original question. The best way to smoke the GRE is to do a bunch of practice tests, possibly even sign up for a GRE prep course. If you're really serious about it and you want to smoke it, that's my recommendation. Not everybody is a natural test taker. Some are. I always was, So in high school, I typically would just smoke those, whatever the standardized test was, We had the Iowa Basic Skills test, right? And I would always smoke it. And my buddies would smoke it because we were all test nerds, basically. Yeah. So anyway, that's my recommendation. And if you can get involved with a research lab, and I'm not just pitching mine, because you guys are mostly out of here soon anyway, but I'm not just pitching mine, but if you can get involved in a research lab and then ideally piggyback on a publication or two before you apply to grad school, that is vastly superior. Because it just sort of says, first of all, it opens up the window, for a really great letter from your lab, director. Again, this is not a gratuitous pitch for me and my lab, but I'm just saying doing research that can get you published is really, really valuable, and in terms of all of that. Anyway, that's kind of my short grad school pitch. Yeah, so Devin asked, is it bad if you take a year between when you're done to like smoke the GRE? No, that's not bad. I mean, it depends on, kind of where you're at. The other thing that you can do is now, like with the ACT, you know how if you take the ACT multiple times, they only report your highest score. GRE is a little like that, except that they kind of like report all your scores. But if you took it and then you took it again, first of all, taking any of those standardized tests all day is a punishment all its own. But if you took one and then took it again and they report both of the scores, everybody knows that everybody can have a bad day. You had a cold that day. You weren't feeling well, whatever. Low blood sugar that day, You know what I'm saying? So that just depends on how the rest of the package looks like, Devin, I think. If you took the GRE and just said, it kind of sucked, it's not going to get me where I want to go, then, and you want to work and save some money or get the experience and you're going to stay poor and be committed to going off to grad school, that's not a bad thing at all. Erica asked earlier, the most influential book I've read and recommend others read. Holy crap. The problem is I've read so freaking many books. A lot. Thousands. I typically read about 50 books a year. Depending on the year. I can gauge how bad my years are by how many books I actually get through that year. And they're usually all over the map. All over the map. And the other thing too is it's topical. I'm going to keep it technical. You know what I mean? We'll stay out of the self-help domain, which that, there's something to be said there. That's a certain topic, right? Because the problem is, man. I'll tell you some of the ones that come to my mind, because I don't know if I can actually narrow to the one, Erica. But I think that The Timeless Way of Building by Christopher Alexander might be up there. The Visual Display of Quantitative Information by Tufte is up there. These are things that affect my philosophy, the way I think. They're foundational. I would even say Phil Armour's book, The Laws of Software Process, which brings the orders of ignorance, into play. It's probably up there. Oh man. In the software industry, I would say Peopleware by DeMarco and Lister. Peopleware was massively influential from a kind of a software sociology perspective and a management perspective. To a lesser extent, The Mythical Man Month by Frederick Brooks. But Peopleware is almost like the transcendent human dynamics of software book. Man. And the problem is I'm actually still moving my books into, I'm looking at my bookshelf, which the bookshelf that's closest to me. I have bookshelves everywhere. In sort of other domains, how about this one? Because I'm rereading it right now, is 1984 by George Orwell. 1984 is an equal opportunity, nonpartisan condemnation of almost everything that's wrong with American politics today across the political spectrum. How's that? I think 1984 is a very, very important book. I think it should be required reading. Anyway, man, there are others. There are others. Thomas Kuhn, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. That is a really impactful book. That is a very, very important book, in my opinion, for understanding science, which ultimately is about how to understand how to think, right? Are these good? Are these good? You liking these? Pure sci-fi, Dune. Dune. Oh, let's go Dune. For a bunch of reasons, actually. Dune is, in my mind, a very, very impactful sci-fi knowledge. And then the Foundation trilogy, which has to do with sort of, predictive analytics and statistical prediction and the notion of what they sometimes call a black swan event, the unpredictable event. What would be the relevance? Anyway, Foundation trilogy would probably be up there in the all-time sci-fi category. Not just because it was like a good read, both of these, but impactful in terms of if you're ever if you've read Dune and you're ever in a situation, and don't watch any of the movies that have been made so far, they're horrible. But you're sitting there and all of a sudden you say to yourself, fear is the mind killer. Boom, Frank Herbert taught me that from Dune. And there's real stuff there that's tangible and applicable, which is why it has such, staying power. Anyway, that's a partial. I know that's a few, and I'm just looking around because I don't know. I'm going to show you something. If you look, okay, do you see that hallway? Do you see that hallway right there? That is the tip of the iceberg. There's stacks of books. That stack of book goes like that, goes 20 feet down that hall and then around, past the corner. And that's after this room over here with 4 floor-to-ceiling bookcases is about half full. Anyway, I would have to scour the so many great books. That's probably good for now, but we're officially out of time. Anyway, I'm going to shut down YouTube, and I'll be just kind of sticking around if anybody has any last second questions.